I was standing right in the middle of my daughter's wedding reception when it happened. The music was soft, people were smiling, and I was quietly enjoying the moment. Then, out of nowhere, my brand new son-in-law grabbed me by the arm and pulled me toward a tall man in a gray suit. "Sir," my son-in-law said, smiling with his perfect white teeth. "This is my mother-in-law. She's an unemployed loser. Can you believe it?" Ha ha ha. The room went quiet. My daughter froze beside him, her smile stuck halfway on her face. I looked at her, my own flesh and blood, and saw shame swimming in her eyes. My heart dropped. My son-in-law laughed again, louder this time, trying to impress the man in the suit. But then the man looked at me more carefully. His eyes narrowed. He straightened his tie. His face changed in an instant. He reached out his hand and shook mine firmly. "Ma'am," he said with the biggest smile, "it is an honor. I didn't expect to meet you here." Then he turned to my daughter, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Young lady, you're fired." And right there, at my daughter's own wedding, the music stopped. Gasps filled the hall. My daughter's face went pale, and my new son-in-law's smile crumbled into dust. I stood frozen, my chest pounding, not because of what the man said, but because of who that man was, and why his words carried such heavy weight. And just as the whispers started spreading across the hall, I turned slowly toward my daughter. What happened next would change everything forever. Now, before I go too far, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Margaret Johnson. I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm 68 years old, a grandmother of 4, and yes, I have a story to tell you that you will never forget. If you love stories like this, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next part of this story. And tell me in the comments from which part of the country are you watching from. I always love to know where my listeners are tuning in from. Now let's go back and start from the very beginning so you can understand how we got to this unbelievable moment. The wedding day had started out so beautifully. I woke up early that morning, made myself a cup of hot tea, and sat by the window watching the sunrise over the Dallas skyline. My heart was full. My only daughter, Clara, was getting married. I had dreamed of this day since the very moment she was born. I still remember the first time I held Clara in my arms. She was so small, so fragile, with tiny fingers that wrapped around my thumb. I promised myself that day I would give her everything I could, even though life wasn't always easy. I raised her mostly on my own after her father passed away when she was just 7 years old. Times were tough, but I worked hard, built a life, and made sure she never lacked love. So that morning, as I slipped into my pale blue dress and pinned my silver hair neatly back, I felt proud. I wasn't thinking about money or titles, or who I was in the eyes of the world. I was just a mother happy to see her daughter walk into her new life. When I arrived at the church, the air was already buzzing. Guests in fine clothes were greeting each other, the choir was rehearsing softly, and the smell of fresh flowers filled the hall. Clara looked like a princess in her white gown, her veil glowing under the sunlight that poured through the stained glass windows. She hugged me tightly, whispered, "I love you, Mom." And for a moment I thought nothing could ruin this day. But then I noticed something. Her groom, Peter, was charming on the outside, shaking hands, laughing loudly, making people feel like they were his best friends. But I saw something in his eyes that worried me. Something cold. Something fake. I brushed it off because I wanted to trust Clara's choice. But deep down, a mother always knows. The ceremony went smoothly. They exchanged vows, rings, and the pastor pronounced them husband and wife. Everyone clapped, and tears ran down my cheeks as Clara kissed her groom. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just being overprotective. But the real test came at the reception. The reception hall was grand. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, the band played joyful music, and waiters moved swiftly with trays of food and drinks. I found myself seated at a table near the front, close to the bride and groom. I was quietly enjoying the meal when Peter suddenly leaned close to Clara and whispered something. She glanced nervously at me, and then at the man in the gray suit who had just walked in. That man was no ordinary guest. He was the CEO of the company where Clara worked. A powerful man. People whispered his name like a legend. He was known to be strict, smart, and quick to judge. Peter straightened his tie and pulled Clara along toward him. I didn't realize what was happening until Peter reached back, grabbed my arm, and dragged me with them. What happened next, you already know. The humiliation. The insult. The truth that cut me like a knife. But what you don't know is why the CEO looked at me with so much respect. Why his words carried the power to change Clara's life forever. And why my new son-in-law's pride would be the beginning of his downfall. Just as the room began to buzz with whispers after Clara was fired, a loud voice suddenly cut through the noise. "Wait a minute," someone shouted from the back of the hall. And at that moment, every head turned, and the real storm began. "Wait a minute." The voice thundered from the back of the hall, and everyone turned to look. The music had stopped, the guests froze mid-bite, and even the waiters carrying trays stood still like statues. I turned my head slowly, my heart beating so fast I could feel it in my throat. There, standing by the entrance, was a tall man with a walking stick. His suit was black, sharp as a blade, and his presence demanded attention. He wasn't young, maybe in his late 70s, but the power in his voice made the whole room go silent. Peter, my new son-in-law, frowned and muttered under his breath. Clara's eyes widened as if she had seen a ghost. The man began walking toward us, each step echoing loudly on the polished floor. I noticed how even the CEO shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his jacket as if he suddenly felt small. When the man reached us, he looked straight at Peter, then at Clara, then finally at me. He studied my face carefully and then he smiled. "Margaret Johnson," he said, his deep voice rolling like thunder. "It has been a long time." A gasp rippled through the room. People began whispering my name as if suddenly I wasn't just an ordinary grandmother in a blue dress. My son-in-law's jaw dropped, his earlier arrogance replaced by confusion. Clara clutched his arm tightly, her hand trembling. Peter stammered. You know her?" The man's eyes hardened. "Know her? Boy, if you truly knew who this woman was, you would never have dared to call her a loser." Gasps filled the air again. All eyes turned to me, and for a moment, the weight of the entire hall pressed down on my shoulders. I wanted to say something to calm the storm, but before I could open my mouth, the man slammed his walking stick against the marble floor. "Everyone here must know the truth tonight," he declared. "About who she is, about what she has done, and about the consequences of insulting her." Peter's face turned pale and Clara whispered, "Mom, what's happening? Who is he?" I opened my mouth to explain, but the man raised his hand sharply to silence me. His voice grew louder, filled with authority. "Your wedding day will not end the way you thought," he said, staring directly into Peter's eyes. "Because tonight, the masks will fall, and the truth will stand naked before us all." The crowd gasped again, and just as Peter tried to pull Clara away, the man revealed something that made the entire hall erupt into chaos. He pointed his walking stick at Peter and shouted, "Your new husband is a fraud." The room exploded with screams, gasps, and whispers. Clara covered her mouth in shock. Peter froze, his face draining of color. And me? My knees trembled as the truth I had buried for years clawed its way back into the open. The word fraud hung in the air like smoke after a firecracker. The reception hall that only moments ago was filled with laughter and music now boiled with gasps and whispers. Guests leaned toward one another, murmuring like a restless sea. I could see eyes darting between Peter, my daughter Clara, and the tall man with the walking stick. Peter tried to laugh it off. His voice shook slightly, but he forced a grin. Fraud. That's ridiculous. Sir, you must be mistaken. This is my wedding day. Perhaps you've had too much to drink." The old man's face darkened. "Do not insult me, boy." He slammed the walking stick on the marble floor so hard the chandeliers trembled above. "You have deceived this woman, her family, and many others. And tonight, your lies end here." Clara turned to Peter, her face pale as paper. "Peter, what is he talking about? Tell me it's not true." Peter placed a trembling hand on hers. "Clara, darling, don't listen to this old man. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's trying to ruin our day." But then the CEO stepped forward. His face was grave, his voice steady. "I know this man," he said, pointing at the old gentleman. "And if he says something, you'd better listen. Because when it comes to truth, he never speaks in vain." The whispers grew louder. I could feel my daughter's body shaking beside me. Her wedding dress shimmered in the light, but her joy was gone, replaced by dread. The old man slowly turned his eyes to Clara. His gaze softened, but his words were heavy. "My child," he said gently. "Do you even know the true name of the man you married today?" The hall went silent again, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Clara looked at Peter, her voice trembling. "Peter, what does he mean? Tell me your name." Peter's lips parted, but no words came out. A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead. His grip on Clara's hand tightened. The old man's voice thundered once more. "His real name is not Peter Williams. His real name is Richard Cole, and he has been wanted in 3 states for fraud, theft, and deception." The words crashed down like thunder in a summer storm. Guests gasped, some even stood from their seats. A woman shrieked. A man dropped his glass and it shattered on the floor. Clara stumbled back, covering her mouth. No, that can't be true." I reached out to steady her, my heart aching as tears welled in her eyes. "Peter, no," Richard snapped suddenly, his mask breaking. "This is nonsense," he barked. "Do you have proof? Anyone can shout lies. This is a wedding, not a courtroom." The old man's eyes flashed. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick brown envelope. With slow, deliberate steps, he handed it to Clara. "Open it," he said softly. Clara's hand shook as she slid the papers out. Photographs, documents, news articles, even a mugshot. Her lips trembled as she stared at the pictures of her husband under another name. Her voice cracked like glass. "It's true." Peter's face turned red, then pale. His perfect groom's smile was gone. He looked like a cornered animal. "Clara, listen, I can explain. I changed my name because I wanted a fresh start. That's all. You don't understand." But Clara stepped back, tears falling onto her dress. "You lied to me. You lied about everything." The hall exploded into chaos. Guests shouted. Some cursed. Some stood with their phones already recording. Others demanded he be thrown out. The CEO raised his hand, silencing the crowd. He looked at me. "Margaret, you knew nothing of this?" I shook my head firmly. "Nothing. If I had known, my daughter would never have married him." The old man stepped closer to me and placed his hand on my shoulder. "I know, Margaret. I know you would never let such a snake near your family." But Peter wasn't finished. His pride wouldn't let him bow. He straightened his shoulders, eyes darting like a trapped rat, and hissed through his teeth. "You think you can ruin me? You think you can embarrass me on my wedding day? You'll regret this." And before anyone could stop him, Peter grabbed Clara by the wrist and yanked her toward the door. She screamed, trying to pull free, but his grip was iron. Gasps filled the room. Chairs toppled. The band stopped playing. "Stop him," the CEO roared. Guests surged forward, but Peter dragged Clara fast, weaving through the tables, heading for the exit. I ran after them, my old legs trembling but my heart burning with fear. "Clara!" I cried, my voice breaking. "Clara, hold on." Peter pushed through the crowd, dragging my daughter like she was nothing but luggage. People tried to block him, but he shoved them aside with surprising strength. By the time he reached the doors, Clara's veil had been ripped from her head, fluttering to the floor like a fallen dove. The old man with the stick shouted behind me. "He cannot escape. Don't let him leave." But Peter flung the doors open wide. The night air rushed in, cool and sharp. Outside, a black car with tinted windows was waiting, engine running. He pulled Clara toward it, her cries echoing in the night. And right as he tried to shove her inside, a loud gunshot rang out in the distance. The sound froze everyone in place. Clara screamed. Peter ducked. Guests rushed to the doorway in horror. I stood there, my heart in my throat, praying silently, "Please, Lord, don't let it be what I think it is." The night had just turned into something darker than any of us could have imagined. The gunshot echoed through the night like thunder cracking the sky. For a split second, everything stopped. The music, the shouts, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Clara screamed, clutching her ears. "Peter, no!" Richard jerked backward, his grip on her wrist loosening. Guests at the doorway ducked, some falling to the ground in fear. My chest pounded as I stumbled forward, desperate to reach my daughter. "Clara!" I cried out, But my voice cracked under the weight of panic. The old man with the walking stick pushed past me, surprisingly quick for his age. His eyes scanned the street outside. "Stay back," he barked. "Stay inside until we know what's happening." But I couldn't stay back. That was my daughter out there. I rushed through the doors, ignoring the trembling hands that tried to pull me back. The black car was still idling by the curb, headlights cutting through the night. Its windows were rolled up, the driver a shadow behind the wheel. Peter stumbled to his feet, wild-eyed, looking around for where the shot had come from. Clara clung to the edge of the car door, her face wet with tears, torn between escaping and freezing in terror. "Get in!" Peter shouted at her, his voice breaking. "Get in now!" Another shot rang out, closer this time. Sparks flew from the car's side mirror as the bullet ricocheted. Clara screamed again and dropped to the ground, covering her head. The guests behind me cried out in shock. Some shouted to call the police. Others dragged children and elders back inside the hall. My legs shook, but I pushed forward. I had no weapon, no strength to fight him, but I had something else, my voice. "Peter!" I shouted, pouring every ounce of fury into my words. "If you love her, let her go. If you have any humanity left in you, don't drag her into this mess." For a moment, just a moment, he hesitated. His chest heaved, his jaw clenched, and his eyes flickered with doubt. But then the driver's door of the black car opened. A tall, muscular man stepped out, dressed in black from head to toe, a gun glinting in his hand. Gasps filled the air. People began screaming from inside the hall. The man raised the gun and pointed it straight at the old man with the walking stick. His voice was cold, sharp like a blade. "Stay out of this," he warned. "This is not your fight." The old man did not flinch. He tightened his grip on the walking stick and took a step forward. "It became my fight the moment this woman was insulted," he said, his voice steady. The gunman cocked the weapon, finger on the trigger. The night trembled with the weight of what was about to happen. And then, to everyone's horror, the gun went off again. The gunshot split the air like lightning tearing the night. For one terrifying second, I thought the old man with the walking stick had been struck. My heart froze, my hands flew to my mouth, and my knees nearly buckled under me. But then I realized he was still standing. The bullet hadn't hit him. Instead, it had slammed into the marble pillar beside the wedding hall entrance, scattering pieces of stone across the steps. Dust rose, guests screamed, and chaos exploded again. The old man didn't even flinch. He stood tall, his eyes locked on the gunman. The walking stick in his hand tapped once against the ground, steady and controlled, like a warning drumbeat. "Is that all you've got?" he said in a calm, commanding voice. The gunman sneered, raising his weapon again. This time, the barrel pointed directly at the old man's chest. Clara cried out, "Stop! Please don't shoot him." She scrambled to her feet, tears streaking her face, and threw herself between the old man and the gun. My breath caught in my throat. "Clara, no." But the old man's hand shot out faster than I thought possible. He grabbed Clara's shoulder and pushed her gently but firmly aside. "Stay behind me, child," he said. "This is not your burden." Peter, or Richard as we now knew, was frozen a few feet away, his face pale, his body trembling. His bravado had cracked. He was no longer the smooth-talking groom who had insulted me earlier. He was a frightened man watching his lies crumble around him. The gunman's eyes flicked toward him. "Get in the car," he ordered. Richard's lips parted, but he didn't move. His hands twitched nervously, his gaze darting between the gun, the old man and Clara. "Now!" the gunman barked, his voice cutting like steel. And then something happened that none of us expected. The old man lifted his walking stick, not just as support but as a weapon. With a sudden, swift motion, he slammed it against the ground, revealing a hidden blade inside. The polished steel glinted under the headlights. Gasps filled the air. Even the gunman faltered for half a second. "You're not the only one armed tonight," the old man said, his voice low and dangerous. The crowd of guests behind me erupted into shouts. Some begged for the police. Others scrambled for safety. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. The gunman cursed under his breath. "Old fool," he spat. "Do you think you can stop me with a stick?" The old man's eyes narrowed. It's not the stick you should fear. It's the truth. I felt a chill run down my spine. Truth. What truth was he talking about? The gunman raised his weapon higher, but before he could fire, flashing red and blue lights flooded the street. Sirens wailed as 2 police cars screeched to a halt outside the hall. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting commands. Drop your weapon. Hands in the air. The gunman cursed again and stepped back. For the first time he looked unsure. His grip on the gun loosened, though he didn't drop it. Richard seized the moment. Like a coward, he lunged toward the car, trying to slip inside while everyone's eyes were on the standoff. Stop him! I screamed, pointing. But the scene was too chaotic. The officers were focused on the gunman. The guests were too afraid to move. And Clara, my poor Clara, was torn between chasing after the man she thought she loved and clinging to the hope that none of this nightmare was real. The old man saw it all. He swung his blade staff toward Richard's legs with lightning speed. The metal struck, and Richard crashed to the ground with a grunt of pain. You will not run, the old man growled. 2 officers rushed forward, pinning Richard to the pavement and snapping handcuffs around his wrists. The crowd erupted into relieved cheers, but the moment of victory was short-lived, because the gunman was still there, and he wasn't finished. With a sudden roar, the man raised his weapon toward the police. Shots fired, bullets slicing through the night. People screamed and scattered in all directions. Officers ducked behind their cars, returning fire. Glass shattered, tires burst, and the once beautiful wedding reception turned into a battleground. I dropped to the ground, covering my head. Clara fell beside me, sobbing, while I wrapped my arms around her like I had when she was a little girl hiding from thunderstorms. Stay down, I whispered, though my own voice shook. Stay with me. The old man, however, did not duck. He moved with precision, blade flashing, eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in decades. He charged forward straight at the gunman. For a man of his age, he moved like lightning. Each step was sure, each swing of the blade calculated. The gunman tried to aim, but the old man struck the weapon aside with the stick, the blade cutting across the gunman's arm. The weapon clattered to the ground. The officers seized their chance, rushing forward and tackling the gunman to the ground. Shouts, cuffs, and heavy breathing filled the night as the battle finally ended. Silence followed, thick, heavy silence. Only the sound of Clara's quiet sobs filled my ears. The police dragged the gunman and Richard toward the waiting cars. Guests began to stand again, shaken, whispering in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. And then the old man turned back to me. His eyes softened, his breathing heavy but controlled. He sheathed the blade back into the walking stick and leaned on it once more, as if he had returned to being nothing more than an old man. Margaret, he said quietly, so only I could hear. I told you the truth would reveal itself tonight. But this is only the beginning. I swallowed hard, my body trembling. The beginning of what? He sighed deeply, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite read. Sadness? Regret? Or perhaps warning? You will soon find out, he said. But before I could ask more, one of the officers approached. He looked at me, then at the old man, his expression grave. Ma'am, he said, we need you both to come with us. There are questions that need answers. And as for you, sir, he nodded to the old man, we've been looking for you too. The old man's face grew hard. He tightened his grip on the walking stick. And in that moment, I realized with a jolt of fear, he wasn't just a guest at my daughter's wedding. He was hiding secrets of his own. The flashing lights from the police cars painted the night red and blue, flickering across frightened faces. Clara clung to me, her hands shaking, her veil gone, her eyes swollen from tears. I held her close, but my own heart was heavy with questions. Why did the officer say they were looking for the old man too? The old man didn't resist. He simply stood tall, leaning on his walking stick, his face unreadable. For a moment, I thought he looked tired, like someone carrying a weight too heavy for one person. Sir, the officer repeated, we'll need you to come with us. You're wanted for questioning in 3 separate investigations. Gasps rippled through the crowd of guests again. Some whispered, others pointed. My daughter looked at me with fresh horror in her eyes. Mom, she whispered. What's going on? Who is he? I didn't answer because the truth was, I didn't know either. The old man finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. I will come. But not as your prisoner. As your witness. The officer frowned. That's not how it works. The old man's eyes flashed. It will tonight. Before the officer could reply, a commotion rose from the back of the police car where Richard and the gunman had been placed. Shouts. Bangs. Metal clanging. One of the officers yelled. They're trying to escape. The crowd screamed as the back door of the car burst open, and Richard, still in handcuffs, stumbled out into the night. His face was twisted with desperation, his eyes wild like a trapped animal, and in that moment I realized the nightmare was far from over. Because Richard wasn't running away. He was running straight toward Clara. Richard came barreling toward Clara like a wild animal, his handcuffs clanging against each other, his face contorted with rage and fear. Clara screamed and clung to me, but I pushed her behind me instinctively. My arms weren't strong, my legs weren't fast, but a mother's love was fiercer than any prison escape. Stay back, Richard. I shouted, my voice trembling but loud enough to stop him for a split second. The officers scrambled, shouting commands, but in the confusion of flashing lights and panicked guests, Richard dodged past them like a snake slipping through grass. His eyes were locked on Clara, his chest heaving with desperation. You're mine, Clara, he yelled. You're my wife, you belong to me. Clara's sobs ripped through the night. You lied to me. You tricked me. I don't even know who you are. Richard didn't stop. He lunged forward, his body crashing into the crowd. Chairs toppled, guests screamed. People shoved each other trying to get out of his way. The old man with the walking stick stepped forward, his blade still hidden inside the staff, his voice sharp and steady. Enough, he thundered. You've shamed yourself enough tonight. But Richard ignored him. He ducked under the old man's arm and grabbed Clara's wrist with both hands. Even in handcuffs, his grip was strong, desperate, almost breaking her skin. Come with me now, he demanded, spit flying from his mouth. They won't understand us, Clara. They'll tear us apart. Clara struggled, crying. Let me go. You're hurting me. I lunged forward, grabbing Clara's other arm, pulling her toward me with every ounce of strength left in my bones. It became a tug of war. Richard yanking her one way, me the other. Her terrified sobs filled the air. And then the old man struck. With a sudden swing, he hooked his staff behind Richard's knees and pulled. Richard lost his balance and crashed to the ground, his grip on Clara breaking at last. She stumbled into my arms, and I held her so tightly I thought I might never let go again. But Richard didn't stay down. Fueled by fury, he scrambled back to his feet, his eyes blazing like fire. You don't know who you're messing with, he spat at the old man. You think you're powerful? You think you're untouchable? You're nothing compared to the people I work for. The crowd gasped. People exchanged fearful glances. The words hung heavy, more dangerous than the gunshots earlier. The old man narrowed his eyes. And who are these people you claim to work for? Richard grinned, though his lip was bleeding. You already know. That's why you're here. That's why you hide behind that stick of yours. You're running just like me. The officers finally surged forward, pinning Richard to the ground again. He kicked and thrashed, shouting wild words into the night. They're watching us right now. You can't stop them. None of you can. The police shoved him into another car, this time locking the doors with 3 officers standing guard. His muffled screams carried even through the glass. Clara collapsed against me, shaking uncontrollably. Mom, she sobbed. What have I done? I married a criminal. My life is ruined. I stroked her hair gently, whispering, No, baby. You're safe now. That's what matters. But inside, I wasn't sure we were safe at all. Because Richard's words echoed in my ears. You're running just like me. I turned to the old man, searching his face. He avoided my eyes for the first time that night. His grip on the walking stick tightened, his jaw clenched. Finally, he sighed. He's not lying. The crowd went silent again. Even the police paused, glancing at one another. What do you mean? I asked, my voice shaking. The old man looked directly at me now, his eyes heavy with secrets. The people he speaks of. I know them. I fought them once many years ago. And if Richard was truly working for them, then you and your family are in greater danger than you realize. Clara whimpered, hiding her face against my shoulder. The CEO, who had been silent since the chaos erupted, stepped forward. His voice was stern. Enough with riddles. Tell us who you are and why these criminals seem to know you. The old man tapped his walking stick against the ground. The metallic clang echoed like a drumbeat of war. He took a deep breath. My name is not what you think it is. I am not just some guest at this wedding. Years ago, I was part of a covert program within the government. I dismantled criminal empires, exposed men who lived like kings, and in the process, I made powerful enemies. Gasps rippled through the guests again. Even the officers looked stunned. The old man's eyes darkened. And now those enemies are resurfacing. Richard was no simple fraudster. He was their messenger. His marriage to your daughter was not by chance, it was by design. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. My throat went dry, my arms tightened around Clara instinctively. By design. I whispered. Are you saying they targeted my daughter? The old man's face was grave. Yes. And they won't stop here. Tonight was only the beginning. The crowd broke into anxious murmurs. Clara lifted her head slowly, her voice trembling. But why me? Why us? The old man opened his mouth to answer. But before he could speak, a black SUV with tinted windows screeched around the corner, tires screeching against the pavement. Its headlights blazed as it sped straight toward the wedding hall. Guests screamed, scattering. Police raised their guns, shouting for cover. My heart leapt into my throat. And in that split second, as the SUV bore down on us, I realized the real danger had just arrived. The roar of the SUV's engine grew louder as it hurtled straight toward us, headlights blazing like angry eyes. Guests screamed and dove for cover. Some tripped over chairs and flower arrangements, their elegant clothes torn and dirty. Down, the officers shouted, guns drawn, but the SUV didn't slow. Clara clutched me tightly, trembling. Mom, we're going to die, she cried. I pulled her close, shielding her with my body, though I knew I couldn't stop a speeding car. My heart thundered in my chest, every second stretching into forever. Then the old man stepped forward. Come. Steady. His walking stick tapped against the pavement as if he were strolling in the park, not facing death. Get back, he commanded, his voice carrying authority. I wanted to scream at him to move, to save himself, but something in his presence froze me. He wasn't afraid. The SUV swerved, aiming directly at him. At the very last second, he slammed his walking stick to the ground, twisting it. With a sharp metallic click, a device shot out from its end, like a hooked spear. With astonishing speed, he hurled it into the SUV's front tire. The hook caught. The tire exploded with a deafening bang. The SUV swerved violently, spinning sideways before crashing into a row of parked cars with a crushing roar of metal on metal. Glass shattered, alarms wailed, and smoke rose into the night. The crowd gasped, stunned. Some even clapped in relief, though their faces were still pale with fear. But there was no time to breathe. The SUV doors burst open, and masked men in black poured out, guns glinting under the streetlights. Clara screamed again. Guests scattered in every direction, ducking behind pillars, overturned tables, anything they could find. The police fired back, and the night lit up with flashing gunfire. I dropped to the ground with Clara, pulling her close. Bullets whizzed overhead, hitting walls and shattering glass. The old man didn't duck. He moved like he was back on a battlefield, staff in hand, deflecting, striking, fighting with a strength no one his age should have. One masked man spotted us and charged. His gun raised, aimed directly at Clara. I froze, my body shielding hers, bracing for the worst. But before the trigger could be pulled, the CEO tackled the man from the side, knocking the weapon from his hands. The gun slid across the ground, stopping right in front of me. My trembling hands reached out, hovering over it. I had never touched a gun in my life. But now, with my daughter's life at stake, I had no choice. I picked it up, my heart racing, my fingers shaking on the cold metal. And then, a shadow loomed behind me. Someone grabbed my arm from behind, yanking me upward with brutal force. When I spun around, my blood ran cold, because staring into my eyes was a masked man with a knife pressed against my throat. The cold blade pressed against my throat sent a chill straight down my spine. My breath caught in my chest and I dared not move. One wrong twitch and the knife could slice my skin. The masked man's grip on my arm was like iron. His voice was low and menacing as he hissed into my ear. "Stay still, old woman, unless you want your daughter to watch you bleed." Clara screamed, her face pale with terror. "No. Please let her go." She tried to rush forward, but another masked man blocked her path, raising his gun to keep her frozen in place. The old man with the walking stick turned his head sharply, his eyes locking on me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear flash across his face. Not fear for himself but fear for me. "Let her go," he said firmly, taking a slow step toward us. His voice carried the weight of authority, but also a dangerous edge. "You don't want to do this." The masked man holding me laughed darkly. "Oh, but we do. This woman is the key." His grip tightened around my arm. "She is worth more to us alive than any of you realize." My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Worth more? What did that even mean? I was just a grandmother from Dallas. Why would men like this see me as a key? The old man's jaw tightened. "So it's true. You're working for them." The leader of the masked men, the one pressing the knife to my neck, chuckled. "Of course we are. And unlike you, we don't betray our masters." Gasps rippled through the crowd of guests still hiding nearby. Clara clutched her chest, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she cried, "what are they talking about?" I wanted to answer her, to say something, anything, to make her feel safe. But my throat was too tight with fear. The old man stepped closer, his walking stick poised like a weapon. "Take me instead. I'm the one you want." The masked man sneered. "You think we don't know who you are? Oh, we want you, old man." "But she—" He pressed the knife harder against my skin, making me wince. "Is far more valuable. They want her alive." The words made my blood run cold. Who were they? And why me? Richard's muffled voice echoed from the police car, where he was still locked inside. He banged on the window shouting, "Yes. Take her. She's the one they're after." Clara spun toward him, her face twisted with shock. "You knew," she screamed. "You knew they were coming for my mother?" Richard grinned through the glass, madness in his eyes. "Of course I knew. Why do you think I married you? To get close to her." The revelation hit me like a hammer. My knees almost buckled, and if not for the masked man's grip, I would have collapsed. Clara staggered back, covering her mouth in horror. "No, no, it can't be." The old man's face hardened. "So it's true. They've been targeting her all along." I shook my head, trembling. "But why me? I'm nobody. I don't understand." The old man's voice lowered, grim and heavy. "You're not nobody, Margaret. You're far more important than you realize. And it's time you learn the truth." The masked man yanked me closer, pressing the knife deeper against my throat. His words slithered into my ear. "Yes. It's time she learned why she's worth more than her entire family combined." The crowd gasped again. The CEO's face turned pale. Clara fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I shook my head violently. "No. I don't want to hear this." But the old man locked eyes with me. His voice was firm, steady, like a father speaking hard truth to his child. "Margaret, your husband's death was not an accident. It was a cover-up. And these men," he pointed at the masked intruders, "are part of the same organization that orchestrated it." The world tilted. My breath caught in my chest. I gripped the masked man's arm without realizing it. What did you just say?" I whispered. The old man nodded slowly, his eyes full of sorrow. "Your husband knew something he was never supposed to know. He was silenced. And now, years later, they want you, because you carry the one piece of the puzzle that could bring them down." The knife pressed harder against my throat, but I barely felt it. My mind was spinning too fast, my heart shattering at the thought. All these years, I thought I was just a widow, living a quiet life, raising my daughter as best I could. And now I was being told my husband's death wasn't fate, it was murder. Clara's sobs grew louder. "Mom, is it true? Is Dad?" I couldn't answer. My lips trembled, my body shook. The masked man laughed cruelly. "Now you understand. You were never safe. And tonight, you're coming with us." He pulled me backward, dragging me toward the smoking SUV. I stumbled, fighting to stay upright, my eyes never leaving Clara's terrified face. "Mom!" she screamed, reaching out for me. The police raised their guns, shouting for him to stop. The old man tightened his grip on the walking stick, his eyes sharp and deadly. The air was thick with tension, ready to snap. And then, before anyone could move, a black helicopter roared overhead, its searchlight blinding us all. The masked men cheered. The leader yanked me closer, knife still pressed to my throat. "Our ride is here," he growled. "Say goodbye." The roar of the helicopter shook the night sky, whipping everyone's clothes and hair in a frenzy. Its powerful searchlight blinded us, turning the wedding hall into a stage of chaos and terror. The masked men raised their fists in triumph. "They're here for us," one shouted over the deafening blades. The leader yanked me tighter against his chest, the knife still grazing my throat. His hot breath burned my ear as he growled. "One step closer, and I'll end her right here." Clara sobbed, trying to break free from the officer holding her back. "Mom! Don't take my mom!" The old man stood rooted, his walking stick gripped like a sword, his eyes fixed on the helicopter. He wasn't afraid. No, he was calculating, waiting for the right moment. The helicopter dropped lower, a rope ladder unfurling from its side. The masked men cheered again and began pushing toward it, dragging me along with them. My heels scraped the ground, my body trembling. "Please," I begged, my voice cracking. "Don't do this." The leader only tightened his grip. "Quiet. You'll know everything once we deliver you." The police shouted, guns raised, but none dared shoot, not with me as the shield. The CEO barked orders, trying to control the panic, but his voice was drowned out by the chopper's blades. Then suddenly, a sharp crack split the air. The old man had slammed his walking stick into the pavement, triggering something hidden within. A small dart shot upward with lightning speed, striking the helicopter's undercarriage. Sparks flew. The machine lurched in the air, its blades sputtering. The pilot struggled to steady it, the rope ladder swaying violently. The crowd gasped. The masked men panicked. "Go! Go now!" the leader screamed, dragging me toward the ladder. Clara's cries pierced the night. "Mom!" And before anyone could stop him, the leader shoved the knife away from my throat, hooked his arm around my waist, and leapt for the dangling ladder. I screamed as we swung upward, my body lifted off the ground, the wedding hall shrinking below me. The last thing I saw was Clara, reaching out with both hands, her face twisted in horror. Then the helicopter jerked, pulling us higher into the dark sky. The wind tore at my face as the helicopter carried us higher and higher into the night sky. My screams were swallowed by the roar of the blades. The masked man's arm locked around my waist like a steel band, his grip suffocating. I kicked and fought, but we dangled from the rope ladder, rising above the wedding hall that now looked like a shattered dollhouse below. "Let me go," I cried, my nails digging into his arm. He laughed behind the mask. "Oh, I won't let you go. You're far too precious. Do you know how long they've waited for this moment?" His words chilled me more than the night air. Who were they? Why me? My whole body shook, not from the cold but from the unbearable fear that none of this would end well. Below, I saw chaos erupt. Police lights flashed red and blue, guests scattered like ants. Clara's voice rose faintly in the distance, screaming my name until her throat must have bled. And then I saw him. The old man. He wasn't running away like most. He was sprinting toward the chaos, his walking stick gripped tight. And to my disbelief he leapt, straight onto the bottom rung of the swaying ladder. The masked men above me shouted in alarm, one firing his gun downward. Bullets sliced through the air, sparks flying as they struck the metal. But the old man didn't fall. With impossible agility for his age, he climbed, one hand after another, his face set like stone. The leader snarled, dragging me higher. "Climb, you fools! Cut him off!" The masked men scrambled upward, guns strapped to their backs, knives flashing. The ladder rocked violently, every swing threatening to throw us all into the black void below. I clung to the rope with white knuckles, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it over the rotor. I wanted to scream for the old man to turn back, to save himself, but the words stuck in my throat. He was coming. He was climbing for me. The helicopter tilted as the pilot tried to shake him loose, but the old man only tightened his grip, his body moving like a soldier who had trained for this his whole life. One masked man reached down to slash at him with a knife. In one swift motion, the old man twisted his staff upward, the hidden blade snapping free with a metallic hiss. He slashed across the man's wrist. The masked man screamed, his knife clattering into the darkness below, and he tumbled off the ladder, disappearing into the night. My stomach lurched. One gone. But there were more. The leader holding me cursed, shoving me upward. Move! Faster! My legs burned, my hands raw, but I was forced to climb. Higher and higher, toward the open bay of the helicopter. The wind tore at me, my lungs screaming for air. Another masked man tried to kick the old man loose. But the old man swung his staff, hooking it around the man's ankle, yanking hard. The man slipped, arms flailing, and fell screaming into the night below. The leader growled in fury. He won't stop. He won't ever stop. His words carried something strange, almost personal. Did he know the old man? We finally reached the opening of the helicopter. Two masked men inside grabbed my arms, dragging me in. I screamed, kicking wildly, but they were too strong. The leader climbed in after me, shoving me to the floor of the chopper. My knees slammed against the cold metal, pain shooting up my legs. The old man was just a rung away from the opening when another masked soldier aimed his gun down at him. End him, the leader barked. My heart stopped. The shot rang out. But at the last second, the old man swung his staff upward, striking the gun and knocking it aside. The bullet ricocheted off the chopper's side with a loud ping. With one final surge of strength, he hauled himself into the helicopter, rolling onto the floor with astonishing grace. The masked men backed away, knives drawn, circling him like wolves. The leader sneered. So the ghost decides to show himself again. I thought you'd learned your lesson years ago. The old man rose slowly, his eyes never leaving the leader. His voice was calm, but each word struck like a blade. You've made a grave mistake. You should never have touched her. He shifted his stance, staff at the ready. For a moment, even the masked men hesitated. I pressed myself into the corner of the helicopter, trembling, unsure if I was safer with the old man here, or in more danger because of him. The leader turned his mask toward me, his knife flashing. Do you even know who sits beside you, old woman? Do you know what he's done? He's the reason your husband is dead. The world froze. The old man's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. My stomach dropped, my breath catching. No, I whispered. That's not true. Tell me it's not true. The leader laughed cruelly. Oh, it's true. He betrayed your husband. Fed him to us like a lamb to the slaughter. And now, you're the bait for his final punishment. The words sliced through me worse than the knife ever could. My vision blurred with tears. I turned to the old man, my voice breaking. Is it true? Did you betray my husband? For a moment the old man stood frozen, his face pale, his silence deafening. And then, the helicopter jolted violently, alarms blaring. Smoke poured from one of its engines. The dart he had fired earlier was finally taking effect. The masked men shouted in panic, the chopper tilting dangerously. We were spiraling. Clara's screams rose from far below, echoing in my ears. And as the helicopter plummeted toward the dark earth, the old man finally spoke. Yes, but not the way he told you. The helicopter spun wildly, the world outside a blur of lights and shadows. My body slammed against the metal floor, my hands clawing for anything to hold. The roar of the failing engine drowned every scream. The masked men struggled to stay upright, gripping ropes and seats, their eyes wide with panic. The leader still clutched his knife, but even he lost balance, slamming into the side wall. The old man moved with purpose, crawling toward the cockpit. Stay down, he shouted over the chaos. Brace yourself. I can't. I screamed, sliding across the tilting floor. My hands scraped against the metal, my heart hammering like it wanted to break free. The helicopter dipped lower, the nose tilting toward the dark forest below. Red warning lights flashed inside the cabin, alarms wailing. One masked man tried to leap for the rope ladder, but the violent spin threw him out the open door. His scream vanished into the night. Another clung desperately to the doorway, only to lose his grip when the helicopter bucked again. He too disappeared into the blackness below. The leader growled, forcing himself upright. "You're not taking her," he snarled at the old man, lunging forward. The old man spun, his walking stick cracking against the leader's wrist. The knife clattered to the floor, skidding toward me. Without thinking, I grabbed it. My hand shook violently, but I raised it, holding it out in front of me as the leader staggered back. The old man gave me a sharp nod. "Good. Don't let him near you." Before I could answer, the helicopter lurched again. Trees rushed up through the open doorway. The pilot's frantic voice shouted from the cockpit, "We're going down." I screamed, clutching the knife and bracing myself. The helicopter smashed into the treetops. Branches cracked like bones, slamming through the open sides, striking the masked men and tearing metal apart. Sparks lit up the cabin as wires snapped and equipment flew. The old man grabbed me, wrapping one arm around my body, shielding me as best he could. His voice was firm, commanding, "Hold on to me. Don't let go." I clung to him as the helicopter ripped through the forest, spinning, crashing until finally, with a deafening roar, it slammed into the ground. The impact threw me into darkness. My ears rang, my body felt weightless, my breath stolen from my lungs. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then faintly, through the smoke and the wreckage, I heard the old man's voice. "Margaret, are you alive?" Smoke stung my lungs as I opened my eyes to darkness and fire. The world around me was broken metal, twisted wires, and the acrid stench of burning fuel. My head pounded, every bone in my body screaming in pain, but somehow, I was alive. The helicopter lay mangled in a clearing. Its rotor blades snapped and scattered like broken wings. Sparks popped from torn wires. Flames licked the sides of the wreck, lighting up the forest with an orange glow. I coughed, struggling to push myself up. My hands shook as I touched my face. Warm blood trickled from a cut above my brow. My dress was torn, my body bruised. But I could move. I was alive. "Margaret." The weak voice came from nearby. Turning, I saw the old man half buried under a collapsed piece of the fuselage. His walking stick lay just out of reach, its hidden blade bent from the crash. His chest rose and fell unevenly, but his eyes were open. I crawled toward him, ignoring the pain in my knees and arms. "I'm here," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm alive." His lips curved in the faintest smile. "Good. I was afraid I failed you." Tears welled in my eyes as I gripped his hand. "You didn't fail me. You saved me." A low groan echoed from behind us. I turned sharply, my heart freezing. The leader. He was alive. His mask had been torn away, revealing a scarred face twisted with fury. Blood streaked his forehead, but his body was still strong. Slowly, he dragged himself up from the wreckage, his eyes burning with hatred. "You're not getting away," he growled, his voice gravelly. "She belongs to us." My body tensed. I looked around desperately for the knife I'd clutched earlier, but it had vanished into the wreckage. My hands were empty, trembling. The old man squeezed my arm, whispering through clenched teeth, "Don't let him take you. Run if you must." But my legs felt like lead. Where could I run in the middle of a burning forest with this monster after me? The leader staggered toward us, every step fueled by rage. "Do you even know why we want you, Margaret? Do you know why your life matters more than anyone else's here?" My heart hammered. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but my throat was dry, my voice trapped by fear. The old man groaned, struggling to push the wreckage off his chest. "Don't listen to him," he rasped. "He'll twist the truth." The leader sneered. "The truth? She deserves to know. Her husband was killed because of him." He pointed a trembling, bloodied finger at the old man. "He betrayed us first, and then betrayed his own friend." I froze, my breath caught. My chest tightened, until I could barely breathe. "Is it true?" I asked the old man, my voice breaking. His eyes closed for a moment, his face tightening in pain, not from his wounds, but from my question. "Yes," he whispered. The word shattered me. Hot tears blurred my vision. I had wanted him to deny it, to shout that it was a lie. But he hadn't. He had said yes. The leader laughed, the sound harsh and cruel. "See? He admits it. Your husband trusted him, and he fed him to the wolves. And now, You'll follow him into the same grave. He lunged forward. I screamed, scrambling backward, but my foot caught on twisted metal, trapping me. My body refused to move fast enough. The old man, despite the wreckage crushing him, grabbed his bent walking stick. With a roar of strength I didn't know he still had, he swung it upward, striking the leader across the knee. The man collapsed with a howl of pain, crashing to the ground beside me. His knife tumbled from his belt, landing inches from my hand. I grabbed it without thinking. My heart pounded as I held it between us, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped it. The leader glared at me, his face twisted with rage. "You won't do it," he spat. "You don't have it in you." I froze, the blade trembling in my hand. He was right, I had never hurt anyone in my life. Could I do it now? Could I end someone, even this monster? The old man's voice cut through my terror. "Margaret, listen to me." I turned to him, my eyes wide, my chest heaving. His voice was weak but steady. "You don't need to kill him. But you must fight. You must survive. For Clara." Clara. Her name filled me with a rush of strength. I pictured her face, her tears, her desperate cries as I was taken. I couldn't let her lose me too, not after losing her father. I tightened my grip on the knife, my hand steady now. "If you come near me again," I hissed at the leader, "I will not hesitate." The leader paused, his chest heaving, his eyes narrowing. For a moment, the firelight reflected in his gaze made him look less like a man and more like a beast. But before either of us could move, a distant sound cut through the forest. Sirens. The police. They were coming. The leader's eyes widened. He staggered backward, snarling. "This isn't over. They'll never stop coming for you. You're theirs, Margaret. You always have been." And with surprising speed for a wounded man, he vanished into the dark trees, swallowed by the smoke and shadows. My whole body shook as I lowered the knife, my breath ragged. The old man coughed violently, blood staining his lips. I crawled to him, clutching his hand. "Don't die," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "Please don't leave me without telling me the truth." His tired eyes met mine. He managed the faintest of smiles. "Then you must listen because you deserve to know everything." And as the sirens drew closer, the forest lit by red and blue flashing lights, the old man began to speak the words that would change everything I thought I knew about my husband, my past, and myself. The flashing red and blue lights painted the trees as officers poured into the crash site. Their voices shouted commands, weapons drawn, but I barely heard them. My entire focus was on the old man. He was pale, his breath shallow, his blood soaking into the dirt beneath him. I clutched his hand tightly, refusing to let go. "Stay with me. Please stay with me." His eyes fluttered open, locking onto mine. "Margaret, listen carefully." His voice was faint but urgent. "Your husband. He discovered something he wasn't supposed to. A secret program. A list of names. Powerful men. Dangerous men." Tears blurred my vision. "Then why did you betray him?" The old man coughed, blood flecking his lips. "I didn't betray him. I tried to save him. I made a deal, to buy him time. But they found him first." His grip tightened weakly. "And now? They believe you hold what he left behind." "What did he leave?" I asked, my voice breaking. His eyes dimmed, his words barely audible. "It's hidden with Clara's ring." Before I could ask more, his hand went limp, and the world around me shattered again. I stared at the old man's lifeless body, his final words echoing in my mind. Clara's ring. The officers swarmed the wreckage, pulling me away, but my heart was already racing toward my daughter. Hours later, back at the wedding hall, now a scene of chaos and investigation, I found her. Clara's eyes were red from crying, her makeup ruined, her dress torn, but when she saw me, she ran into my arms as though she were a little girl again. "Mom, you're alive," she sobbed. I held her tightly, trembling. "Yes, and it's because of you. Clara, your father left something for us. The truth. Where's your ring?" Confused, she slipped it off her finger. It was the engagement ring Richard had given her, but as I turned it in my hand I realized, it wasn't Richard's gift at all. The inner band bore tiny etchings, almost invisible. With an officer's help, we pried it open. Inside was a microchip. The CEO gasped when he saw it. That's evidence. Names, accounts, enough to expose half the network behind this. Clara clutched me, terrified. So Dad, he died protecting this? I nodded, tears streaming. And now we'll finish what he started. That night, as dawn broke through the chaos, I understood the lesson buried beneath the horror. Truth always rises, no matter how deep men try to bury it. Evil may hide in wealth, power, or masks, but family, the love we fight for, outshines it all. I looked at Clara and whispered, "We'll survive this. Together." And for the first time since the nightmare began, I believed it.